All right, so let me introduce the one, the only, recently returned from a tour of crowned heads of Europe.
You can't stop her.
This is Director Driver, and I have asked him to talk about pretty much anything he wants and your questions about anything you want. And now, take it away.
That's a big space. I'll keep it confined. Thank you, Councilwoman Mockler, and thank you for giving me the part of your forum here to talk about the library.
My pleasure.
You can call me Jason. My name is Jason Driver. I'm the director of the Kitsap Regional Library. I've been in the capacity of director for 3.5 years now, having previously been a librarian, and I'm still a librarian in Chicago for 22 years. So I've got 25 years of library experience. Got recruited here, decided to move the whole family, and the rest is history. I can tell I love libraries because this is what I do. I'm here to really educate you more about our ballot measure, and just to give you information, as that will be on the ballots in August. But before I do that, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about our system, what we do. We had some conversations earlier about library card holders. How many of you are library card holders, if I could ask you? All right, that's all of us. Rowan, you should raise your hand. And so, part of what I don't want to do is talk a lot at you, and so I want to kind of wrap up a little bit of the history stuff and why we're doing this in about 20 minutes, and just allow for conversation. I believe in having an informal way to just talk. And so, again, I'm mostly here to answer any questions, but I do want to give you information. And a lot of the information I've given you, what you have at your table is, first of all, our strategic plan, which was essentially we started that process when I got to this library system to really figure out what would be the next 7 to 10 years of library services for this county, with the goal of having library services be as strong now as they've ever been, and to setting us up really to have a strong library system in the future. Library has a rich history here in Kitsap County, over 100 years of library service. As a unified system, though, we're celebrating 80 years as a regional library system this year. And so we talked earlier about participation in our passport program, which is essentially you grab a passport and you visit all 9 locations. And so that's where we're really going to start. I want to give you an overview of who we are, what we do. We are a system of 9 libraries, including 1 mobile services unit, and we serve 107,000 households in Kitsap County. And from Bainbridge to Kingston to Port Orchard, we provide free access to an extensive collection of books, both physical, e-books, audiobooks, magazines, and more. And I'm going to talk about the more too, because oftentimes when I do this presentation, one of the things that happens is there's an aha moment for someone when I say, did you know you could do this at the library? And hopefully I listed some of that today, where you'll say, I didn't know we could do that at the library. And so I'll talk a little bit about those services. The real magic of what we do is our people. Our people represent our biggest asset. That's about 200 employees who are charged with everything from making sure people and vendors are paid on time, to making sure our facilities are maintained and clean, to making sure materials are transported. If you put a book on hold today, you will likely, and my home branch is Sylvan Way, and so if I want reading materials, and I am a patron too, I frequently read and consume information, I put lots of materials on hold because I might not want to drive out to Bainbridge if that book or resource is at Bainbridge, and I can have it delivered to wherever I am, and I can return it anywhere and it'll get shipped back. That's part of what we do. And so out of all those crew of folks, they're all really making the library go. And so I'll talk a little bit about how those services are extended. But more than that, I'm really proud of what we've been able to do over the years in terms of making sure that all residents of this county have an opportunity to have access to all of our resources and information. I believe strongly that strong libraries make for strong communities, and so that's the very nature of why we're having a ballot measure. And I want to talk about our budget a little bit too, because it's important to talk about how we've arrived at this moment of, well, why do we need a levy lid lift? Why is that important? Don't you have enough to sustain what you have? And I always equate it to the last time we levied was 2017. I wasn't here then, but if I think about my cost to live in 2017 versus what they are in 2025, substantially more. Do I make more money now? I do, but in large part because I've gotten promotions and taken new jobs and so forth and so on. But our community investment is that 96% of our budget comes from the local property tax levy. 96. And so that's important because that's how we're funded. That's pretty much the whole pot. There's a small slither of, funding that we get from other sources, but 96% of our budget is supported by the property tax levy. And so that funding, again, ensures that we keep our locations open 7 days a week. And when I say 7, not all 9 locations are open 7 days a week, but we have 3 locations that are open 7 days a week. It's important that we've listened to our residents and we've listened to what was asked, and that's to have more evening hours. That was out of our 2017 levy. We were able to add evening hours. We're open until 7 in most of our locations Monday through Thursday, and open until 1 until 5 on Sundays at a couple of our larger locations at Port Orchard, at Sylvan, and then on the north end at Bainbridge, we're open on Sundays. And so we have library services that are available for everyone. So a little bit about the 2017 levy. At that time, we had asked the county to approve a 43 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, up from, I think at that time we were at, 39. And we were able to do that, and we're proud of our fiscal record of being able to make good on those levy promises. We were able to maintain for the last really 8 years to have the library still operating debt-free. We leverage private grants and donations and other support to really dig into innovation, including now is a new Port Orchard library that's being planned with private funds. Wanted to split out two. Facilities are not a part of this levy, nor were they a part of the 2017 levy. We don't use the property tax levy for any facilities, and so out of the 9 facilities we own, or the 9 facilities that we're in, we only own 2 of them, the Port Orchard location and the Sylvan Way location. Each of the other facilities are managed by friends groups, and so with those friends group support, we're able to stay in those buildings. The trade-off or the return for us is to be able to provide the staff, the materials, and obviously the services to be able to reach those communities. So we're pretty proud of the fact that we've got some dynamic and unique partnerships that allow us to be able to still continue to operate, because building costs represent pretty much a huge portion of trying to upkeep and maintain our services. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So we've made meaningful progress, or progress on the promises of the last levy. And I'll just kind of state out what they were. We eliminated overdue fines. That's been a barrier to lots of residents, particularly those who don't have the resources to be able to borrow materials and return them. We've maintained teen learning internships to prepare teens for the workforce, also part of workforce development. We don't just do that for teens. We, of course, have those services for adults. I'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. We've expanded early learning opportunities, which we always think is foundational for libraries. When we think about a library and think about a library through the ages, it's the librarian with the bun reading a story to a group of kids in a setting, and that's what I used to do. That was part of my past. I was a youth services librarian before I got into management, and so I worked at a lot of different levels in the library. As a frontline employee, I've worked in closed departments to develop programming. So started off as like a library assistant in 1993 and moved on and got my master's in library sciences, and then moved on to supporting all librarians in terms of development of early literacy programs. So early literacy is a big passion of mine, and still is. Being able to have parents participate and bring their kids to story time represents for a lot of them the first real sort of opportunity to have their kids be socialized in a way that we know later is really important in terms of having experiential learning, being able to negotiate and have executive functioning skills with other children, and to be able to have a professional model reading and model what literacy looks like. We've made significant, yes?
Do you have that in Spanish also?
Yes, we have some bilingual opportunities. I'll talk more about that because that's going to come up later. Yes, but the answer is yes. We've made significant progress in deferred maintenance projects, as I've stated. While we don't own all of our facilities, the two that we do own are aging facilities. Most notably the one I work in, which is Sylvan Way, represents our hub for the entire system. And so that's where all of our IT is housed, our facilities teams are housed, our collections teams are housed, all of our admin is there. So everything really moves out from Sylvan. Most systems like this have a central library, and so for that particular building, it's 50 years old. Had a lot of people say, yes, this building looks just like it looked in 1975 when it opened. It's both refreshing and a bit scary too, because operating a building that's 50 years old, as you might tell, represents a lot of challenges. And we like to call Sylvan the money pit. But I digress. The last sort of promise we made was restored staffing levels and expanded open hours, which I talked about, including the Sunday hours and weekends. So our last labor was more about restoring what had been lost throughout the years of budget cuts. So previous to that levy in 2017, we had cut a lot throughout the years because the library just wasn't fiscally sustainable. This levy is a little different, and so it's about both continuing the high level of services we've been accustomed to for our county and doing it well enough, but it's making sure that the library has a clear view of what its purpose is and the fact that it can remain a viable resource for the county. And there are some inherent challenges, which I'll get into as to why we're levying, because that's important. At the current rate, what will happen if we don't pass a levy? And I'm going to talk about where we are with this levy right now. In 2017, we had asked to increase from 27 cents to 43 cents per $1,000 of assessed property value. After doing the legwork in terms of our finances and figuring out where we are and the costs that it takes to do business these days, we have landed on an ask of 12 cents beyond where we are now. We're at 27 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. We're asking for a 12 cents increase. And we, obviously the most salient thing that prohibits us from keeping up with growth and having revenue growth is the 1% cap on revenue growth for public agencies, otherwise known as the IMIN initiative. That is, I believe it was well intentioned, but it didn't take into consideration agencies like the library, who we aren't in business to make money. We're funded by the community for the community. And so again, operating on $2017, it's hard for us to be able to maintain. So what we're really looking at is being fiscally sustainable, making sure that we can still remain a viable system throughout the year. So what I've asked my leadership team to do when I got here is we did the strategic plan to really take a look at and dig into the community to figure out what we did well, what resonates with our patrons, what resonates with the community, how we can continue to do that and at what cost. And this is the cost that it takes to be able to continue to do that. So if we don't do it, what happens? Are we laying people off? No. Are we closing facilities? No. Will you still be able to take your kid to a story time? Absolutely. What likely will happen though is we might have deferred maintenance on some of our bigger projects.
What percentage do you need to make it pass?
50 plus 1, 50% plus 1 voter is essentially the threshold.
I mean, the county's growing, and it's doubled, I think, since I've been here. So doesn't that add more money?
What's that?
Doesn't that give you more money from the property tax? Because everybody's taxed for this.
Yeah, and it doesn't. That is a common question it asks, and it does not inherently give us more money. We realized some money with new construction revenues, but not enough to really be able to offset some of the rising costs. And so unfortunately, as property values increase, they reset the formula for us to still be able to collect essentially what our proper rate is. And so unfortunately, no, we don't realize more money. We may get a little bit of a bump from year to year, but it's not enough to be able to offset all of the increased costs. Obviously, salaries and benefits are increasing. Benefits, of course, are increasing yearly. It's an arena that is you know, we'd like to be able to control, but we can't because that rate isn't set by the market. You know, the cost of materials has skyrocketed, especially for digital materials. That's one arena in which we'd like to be able to keep up with the demand from our patrons. As you know, our library is able to, within its spaces, house all of the materials, but how many of you, I would ask, read digital books, audiobooks, ebooks?
E-books.
Yeah, I don't do those, and so that's not a thing for me. But I know this is a thing for, I'm an old-fashioned bibliophile when it comes to reading. I like the texture, the smell, I like to turn pages. But we know we have people who like to read on the run. Or listen, particularly when they're driving, right?
Or walking.
Or walking. That represents a huge...
Or if they want to read something that's not in this library system.
Or if they want to put their, as we learned, a couple of our board members like to listen to their books on 2x or 3x, and they like to go a little bit faster, right? And so, however you consume, we want to make sure we're still available in terms of being able to provide all those resources. And so, if this levy passes, you know, the average cost for books, technology, utilities, wages, as I've talked about, have increased sometimes 2-3-fold. This reset at 39 cents to allow us to keep doing what we're doing essentially for the next 7 to 10 years. So that's what we're looking at, sustaining ourselves, and then until that formula changes, there has been some talk in Olympia about revisiting the IMAN initiative. I don't guess that will get any traction, at least. It didn't this past year in following what was happening in Olympia, but likely in the years to come, that's something we can look at. But until that happens, this is kind of what libraries need to do, unfortunately. So when people ask, well, why do you have to go out for a levy? That's the reason. And if there were an opportunity for us to, you know, talk about like how we can have a formula in which the library is reassessed after a number of years and we're giving the requisite bump that's tied to the CPI, that would be helpful for us. Yes?
I've heard recently that there's been some issues with publishers as it regards to ebooks, about libraries retaining access to them. Instead of just paying for it and you have it for a set amount of time, libraries have to keep renewing and paying again for the ebooks. Is that also?
Yeah, and you know, we're fortunate that we have access, first of all, for ebooks, and you're right, the pricing model, without like getting into the whole ebook politics, and it's one of the things that libraries have now really started to try to stick together and talk to the couple of vendors who are out there to talk about more fair pricing models. And so, in short, the licensing model for ebooks is not sustainable for us in terms of being able to purchase more copies of an ebook to be able to meet the demand. So if you notice, if there's a really popular ebook, the whole list is pretty untenable. And that's because we're only licensed for so many books depending on your geographic region and how many folks you have in your population. So unfortunately for us to be able to access more copies of an ebook, it's unsustainable for us in terms financially. And so we can only maintain so many copies at one time. And so typically what happens if you've had that experience, then you've had a really long wait list. Part of the problem too is that a lot of patrons can get digital cards now, so you're also competing with patrons who might be across the water. We can really map out where our patrons are. That's why I landed on that 107,000 households, but I can also see from one of my stats portals that we have a significant number of patrons who are across the water. And because people really take advantage of libraries and want to be able to get all the resources, and so we have lots of patrons who have multiple library cards. That's a good thing to have, but unfortunately you're right, the licensing models for ebooks are, it's just not sustainable for us. So having said that, if this does approve at 39 cents, the average cost for an average property, which is, you know, average property of about $500,000 is about a $60 a year increase.
For a $500,000 property?
Correct. So as we like to say, about $5 a month or a cup of coffee a month, depending on, like, it was in a conversation earlier with somebody, depending on the cup of coffee. If it's Starbucks, maybe not, but And I'm not downing Starbucks, I just, yeah, that's what it is. So if if the library levy doesn't pass, again, back to what I was gonna talk about, deferred wait times for major maintenance projects, we just have to put those on hold. Save for anything that is a, health and safety issue for staff, a collapsing roof or something like that. We'd have to figure out how we can repair that. It also might mean a longer wait time for certain materials. We just wouldn't be able to keep up with the demand. And it might also mean a reduction of certain programs. And so I want to get into the programmatic aspect too, because besides the things that are tried and true for libraries, and you talked about earlier, bilingual story times, part of the real magic of what we do that folks might not know about is the partnerships. One of the things I'm proud of is that the library has been able to create a lot of programs and a lot of opportunities by having partnerships. And so without partnerships, we wouldn't be able to do things like, for instance, our summer learning program, which is really a foundational program to stem summer learning loss. I mean, I can remember my days as a youth services librarian in the inner city of Chicago, having kids come, and that was their only really opportunity to have, cultured experiences that were also involved with learning. Because it's not just about the book. It's, and if you notice, I said summer learning. It was summer reading, and so now we know what we know about learning, and that a lot of the learning, it's not just rote knowledge from books, but if you're like me, I'm a visual learner. I need to see things, I need tactile experiences, I need that experiential piece. And so one of the things we're proud of last year is we had a partnership with the Seattle Storm, and so they offered us free tickets. And so as a, just a 5-hour reading goal, we were able to get families tickets, free tickets, and ferry passes to be able to travel over to see the storm. Great partnership, right? Because what we heard back from anecdotes is, first time we've ever gone on a ferry, first time in downtown Seattle, first time visiting a basketball game, and there's the opportunities to talk about, marine life while you're going over the ferry, talking about, anything you want to talk about, because that's part of learning. Being able to do bilingual story times, we're able to do that through our foundation, which goes out for grants to help augment a lot of our services. So for instance, the foundation supports summer learning. The foundation also supports, when I say the foundation, our Kitsap Regional Library's foundation, which is able to have donors, prop up some of these major programs that we wouldn't have the budget for, because again, 96% of our budget comes from property tax levy, and out of that, about 85% is staff. And again, that's a important resource. It doesn't leave a lot left. And then, what's the thing I didn't mention? Collections. I like more money for collections. I like more money to be able to do more things than we're doing. One of the things I was able to take advantage of when I moved here, because I'm from and grew up in the inner city and spent my first, how old am I? I'll be 57. Spent the first 54 years of my life in the inner city. To come out here, it's this beautiful location, and be able to rent a telescope from my library and put it on my deck and look with my youngest daughter and just look up into the cosmos was just beautiful. Like, who knew they could borrow a telescope from the library?
Or a ukulele.
Or a ukulele.
My aha moment is going to be the telescope.
What's that?
My aha moment is going to be that telescope.
I knew we'd get one.
Yeah, that's...
And they're available. If you're a parent who, all parents are busy. I'm a parent of 5, and I've been in busyness, various stages of busyness with each of my groups, adult group that's grown now, and my younger group. A lot of times you don't have time, you need help. We bundle together kits that parents can take home, early literacy kits that have not only books in there, but manipulatives and flashcards and things like that to help families who might not have the resources to be able to go out and buy all of that stuff. And then you talked about the ukulele, you talked about, we have not talked about the Washington Discover Pass, which is available for folks who want to explore and might not be able to afford.
You want to borrow it, or?
You borrow. Comes in a kit, and so you'll have a pair of binoculars in there, you will have a map, you will have and if my collection and technical services team is watching, they're probably gonna kill me, I don't have all the stuff in it, but essentially it's a kit for you to be able to explore nature and get out and, you know, discover Washington. And so what will likely happen again if this does not pass is we will be in a space where we'll have to slow things down. We're not trying to build new buildings. It's a rural county, but we'd like to be able to reach more people in better ways, which really amounts to having staff get out and show up where people are. We're already doing that. You'll see us at all the festivals this summer. We're able to get out and have our mobile services unit take materials to people who are not able to get out, largely people who are in assisted care facilities and or people who are suffering from long-term or short-term disabilities. I've been on a couple of ride-alongs with that team, particularly when I first got here, very impactful. These are things I wouldn't like to stop because it has been shown a real value to patrons, particularly post-pandemic. One of the sort of major moments for me, and like when I got here in 2022 to learn about the impact of this library and this system, I think all libraries are powerful and impactful, but it was important for me to get out of a city mindset and get into the mindset here. So a lot of what I did in the first really 2.5 years was talk, like I'm doing now, but it was out at Rotary speaking. It was out at all the Friends groups. It was speaking to, you know, all the mayors, speaking to community organizations, folks like yourself. I'd meet a person out and they'd ask, what do you do? What's going on? And I'd tell them where I am, and I'd say, you wanna have coffee? Let's talk. To be able to understand the impact of this system and what it's done for people, one of the things that I had the understanding of is that mobile services in particular was really vital for people who had lost contact post-pandemic. And mind you, when I got here in 22, there was vestiges of the pandemic. We were kind of still at the back end of that, right? So when I came here, we were still wearing masks. We were just really had just opened up in terms of having people enter our facilities. Some of the things that have stayed with that are curbside services. People can still do curbside. There's some beautiful things that came out of that. Being able to really have these niche services. If folks come in and you want, I'm just gonna throw out a name, you want a mystery book. I'll give an example I had last week. I was working at Port Orchard and a gentleman came in and wanted this book by Sue Grafton called D is for Deadbeat. And I explained to him that Sue Grafton passed away before she got to her final letter. And if he wanted more, we could place a hold and get all of that stuff. And that was great, but the understanding that like this is a system and that people are using this place and that these books are available and on demand, we could curate a list of books for that person based on that mystery book. And they call them book bundles, so our librarians are adept at making these bundles of like materials that you would like to entice people to check out, and or we could have these curated services where you can say, hey, I'm thinking about getting into the mystery genre and I read D is for Deadbeat. What can you recommend? And we'd have a librarian go to work for you and curate a list of books that might get you started off in the mystery genre. I'm gonna stop talking and let you talk to me a bit, but I really just wanted to impart to you why we're doing this. The information is self-explanatory here, and maybe it's not, but that's why I'm here to answer questions. We have had 2 public forums already. I consider this a 3rd, even though it wasn't planned. Excuse me. The next of which is at Pulse Bowl tomorrow, and then we'll have 2 virtual ones. And so I just really want you to get an understanding of why libraries are important, and whether you know that or not, I hope or if you didn't, I hope you feel that today. The most common question I think that resonates in folks' minds who might be a little, and we're not talking about people who are not supporting or will not support, and I'm not here to tell you to vote yes or not because that's not my job here today. My job is to inform. We'll let the materials dictate whether your decision, what it's going to be. But I just really want to, regardless of not whether you support this measure, I want you to be engaged with your library, because I think you'll find that the library of 2025 is a lot different than your library of 2017, and is a lot different than your library of 2007. Last thing I'll mention, in terms of why we're so valuable is the aspect of library as place. Having a dearth of open and available community spaces, especially post-pandemic, has really wreaked havoc on our communities. And the reason I say that is because, and this was true before I left Chicago, there's an increased demand for people to be able to get into spaces to have a condo board meeting, have a town hall. I've seen baby showers in our community rooms. I've seen a wedding shower. I've seen a little bit of everything in those spaces because it's a free space and it's available. As a matter of fact, we don't have enough of them. I wish we were able to build more spaces, but we can't. What we can do is partner with organizations to be able to stem some of the, I would say, deficiencies that are available in the community, whether it's, available resources, available information. We have mobile health vans that come on our properties that help with folks who are homeless. We've been able to partner with organizations to be able to have Narcan in our facilities for people who might be experiencing drug addiction. We've been able to partner with the Bremerton School District to have free lunches in our facilities during the summer for families who might not have resources. So the library as a place is more important too because we're able to be there to meet the demands of the public without having them go to unfamiliar places. More times than not, people feel comfortable in the library but might not feel comfortable in a governmental facility, for instance, or even in a school building, for instance. But having the library be available for those types of things, tax aid is really popular around tax time. We're able to have free tax help from the AARP in a lot of our facilities. That's been absolutely a boost to our community. And there's a ton more partnerships I could mention. The last one is the one I'll finish on, is where we started bilingual story time. And I tried to get there a couple times and got lost in my own loquaciousness. We were able to do, and when I say we, the foundation, the Kitsap Regional Library Foundation was able to secure a grant from Humanities of Washington, which was then able to purchase materials in other languages to be able to, and it was very successful in a few of our communities, but most notably the ones I participated in were the ones in the Post Bowl Library. We were able to really dig in with families who may not have had a lot of English spoken in the home particularly. You're talking maybe first generation kids who are here with families who might not have a lot of experience with English. So what it did is provided, what we know about literacy is has to be modeled at home, and so be able to have those materials both in English and Spanish, and to be able to do these story times, and to take away the barriers of having food. The grant funded food for all of these programs. It funded materials to take home, because what we know about literacy is that, and this is the last way I can tell you the library is, it's like a Russian nesting those dolls. I keep talking and I keep thinking of more things. It keeps unpacking itself. I love those things, by the way. What I would say is, in terms of like being able to dig into the partnership piece, without stuff like that, we wouldn't be able to realize giving those kids books in the home, because what we know about literacy, it's more than just being able to have access to books. To really move the needle on literacy, you need to have books in your home. And so your question might be, well, how can you give taxpayer funds and give books to people? We don't. The books I check out, I have to return. But anything the foundation, because it's a 501c3, anything it's able to grant raise for and purchase with donated monies, not your taxpayer dollars, it's able to give away. And so part of what happens in the summer is, if kids are coming in and they're hitting their reading goals, we're giving them books. And we want them to have books in the home, because it's not enough to just borrow books for 3 weeks and take them back. You need to have books readily available at the fingertips. And so that's my soapbox. I just really want to hear from you right now, and I want to thank you for giving me the space and the opportunity to speak to you.
So the question, in 2017, it was, the rate
Dan,
was...
can I interrupt you really briefly?
What?
Hold on, do you want water, Director Driver?
Yes.
Okay, please carry on.
All right, so it was 43 cents per 1,000, and then now it's 27 cents per 1,000, so you lost some funding along the way?
And so, again, it's the formula, and this gets complex. So as property values raise, you have to calculate that rate to be able to get you essentially what you're getting, that base amount that you're getting. So when you calculate the rate, we're getting a certain amount. It's 15 or 16 million a year. So it would reason then that if those property values shot up, we get more money. We don't. We don't realize more money. You get the same money, you just have to adjust the rate.
Oh, okay, so that's why the rate went down?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha,
Right.
because the value increased?
Yes.
And then you want to go back up to 39?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so we're actually, the rate is actually less than it was back in 2017?
Correct.
The proposed rate?
Proposed rate. And so could we go up to 50? Yes, but that wouldn't be prudent. Obviously, it's a big burden on the taxpayers, and what's your plan to spend all that money? Our plan, as I said, is to sustain. This is about a sustainable library that can continue to be here. We've proven the value, and our populace has talked about what's important to them. And how do I know that? Because in doing this strategic plan, part of what we did is we told the community. We had a couple sessions where we invited people out. I wanted to hear from them. How do you use the library? How is it important to you? What resonates with you? We dug into all of our community partners and asked them, what works for you in the library? How does this have value for you? And we've been able to make adjustments along the way. I want to talk about one of those adjustments because it's not all the time that we need to fundraise and or raise a levy rate to be able to do something. One of the things I'm proud that we're able to do is, with the resources we already had, is we had some patrons in Poulsbo who wanted to be able to access the meeting room outside of library business hours, which probably in 2017 we wouldn't have been able to do, but because of, we've been able to steward resources responsibly, and there's a model that exists for expanded access of libraries. And I wish I had my ID on right now. Basically, we're able to, we've changed all of our IDs over to be able to access our facilities. We were, and that meeting room isn't attached to the library proper. It's down, if you've ever been to Paulsville Library, it's apart from the library and it's accessible without going through the library space. Essentially what we did for those community groups is that we really create a system whereby they can access the facility post-library operating hours so that they can do their meetings. And in this case, it's very valuable. We can't restrict, our library hours are restrictive, even though we've expanded them. If somebody wants a meeting at 8 and we close at 7, what do we do about that? Right? And so we're able to turn on expanded access because we already had the technology that we put in place to be able to have our staff access all of our doors. We made it more secure for our staff to be able to have secured spaces, but also allowed us to have the opportunity to be able to have access to that space after hours. You know, with some indemnification language that people have to sign over in order to use that. But there are possibilities with that, in that I've visited a lot of my other library colleagues throughout the state when I got here, again, to learn how libraries operate here and what's important to folks here. And it's part of what's important is that in a couple of other library systems, they were able to turn on access either to a lobby so you can get your holds afterwards, and or one of the other things we're able to do is put what it essentially amounts to if you've seen Amazon lockers, we added a book locker in the outside of Paulsville too. That way you don't have to be relying upon the library proper to get your materials if you happen to be scheduled so that you can't make it during opening hours. So we've been proud of the resources we've been able to steward over the years to be able to make the library even more powerful to people and more accessible. Other questions?
I've got a couple of comments and a request.
Yes.
So I've, gone to libraries ever since I was a kid. My mother brought us to the library, so. I would like, I'm looking for, I just got a new Apple phone.
You got a new what?
Apple phone,
Okay.
iPhone, and I need some help with computers and trying to catch up with things that are constantly changing. So, what about, I guess,
Just
I
some
don't know
marijuana
what word to
computer.
call it, be more than computers, but just digital classes.
Yeah, so that's important. Our folks can that can happen in a couple different ways. Our folks are available to,
And I was just up there and they were wonderful. They helped me do
Good.
something with the Kindle.
yes. We've had technology classes before. I mean, obviously our folks come in, and the other asset to having our branches is being able to have our computers. I think I take for granted that, I know how to use a computer. I've been using a computer, probably since.
I have too, but things change.
They do. But we also take for granted that everybody knows. And one of the things I had to learn
Okay,
is this does not equal this.
right.
People who are, as they call them, digital natives, or maybe not that particular group, may have come up and know how to do this. When you talk about an actual keyboard, a mouse, that's a whole different animal. But how might one apply for a job in that space if you can't do it with, your phone? A lot of the application processes, applying for benefits, things like that are done on a computer. So yes, at many times we've had technology
I
classes.
mean, that's gonna happen more and more.
Yeah.
eventually.
So we will. And we've done it here in Chicago. We did something called Cyber Navigators, which is essentially a grant-funded thing through the foundation there. And it hired people to just come in and help people literally navigate to Cyber Navigator, navigate cyberspace. But more than that, there were classes too. Basic, mouse help, how to get an email address. Our professionals are still available to do that with folks as they come in. For anything more lengthy, we did just ask people to set an
Right,
appointment.
I mean, I'm just thinking
Yes.
something more systematic.
But no, I agree. I think that's an arena that we're still going to be involved in, and so
This has become more and more important.
it is.
So,
Dan Heron, it works with Goodwill, which offers free courses on various
Goodwill does?
Yes,
And we've,
Or
Well,
anyone-
Let's see.
computer literacy.
so GED preparation, reading and writing, computer literacy, English as a second language, customer service.
And anybody can join that?
Yeah, as long as they're looking for work. That's the-
Oh, I'm
that's-
not looking for
That's
work.
that's a requirement. I know of another place, Kitsap Community
Yeah.
Seniors.
you took the words right out of my mouth. I was just trying to get it in.
I
Kitsap
just got a
Community
sheet on
Seniors.
that. Okay.
They have free
Yes,
program.
and they've worked with us in the past too. And again, having the partnerships has been really key for us because again, our staff can only be in so many places at one time. And they're doing lots of different things. If you come into a facility, they're shelving, they're processing books, they're out at programs, they're doing just about anything. And so we've leveraged our partnerships to be able to come in and do those specialty things like teach computing classes, right? And so forth and so on. Shredding classes. You've got a bunch of stuff you need shredded, not everybody has a shredder in their home. We've had shredding trucks come up and
Oh, yeah.
bring all your stuff and, right. So we really want to respond to the communities and what they're asking for, yes.
Speaking of the fact librarians are doing so much, kind of a question. Did you ever see Emilio Estevez's movie, The Public? It's from 2018.
I know what you're talking about, and I wanted to see that one badly and never did. It resonated with me during that time because it was, I was working in Chicago at that time, and a lot of, I think I saw the trailer, it kind of resonated, some of the scenes in it. But I have not seen it.
For those of you not aware, The Public was a movie focusing on a public library in Cincinnati, and it was the site of a sit-in, so to speak, by some part of the homeless community. And it portrayed a number of the extra tasks that aren't just managing the library that librarians have to deal with on a daily
Yes.
basis. I was lucky enough, I went to a showing that Emilio Estevez was there for, from where I was living at the time, so he talked about it and everything afterwards. So, I was just curious, because you mentioned all the extra hats that librarians have to wear.
A lot of extra hats, and a lot of really amazing things, especially the connecting out in the community. I don't think that folks realize all that's contained, particularly in the physical space. And the digital realm too, being able to learn a foreign language, being able to, read, be able to access. I like reading a lot, and to be able to access all the bits of information in today's world costs you a lot of money. If you go, most of the news things are, after you get your, I don't know how many free reads with New York Times, I think I finally maxed out on them.
You gotta pay for it.
There's
You
easy
do.
ways to get around that.
And then you get the paywall.
What about archive, .ph?
No, let's talk about it after the meeting.
Out in the
though.
parking lot.
Out in the parking lot.
No one cares.
But, you know, that's a valuable resource too, because there are people who strictly come in and read the newspaper every day, get their magazines. That's important. You have all types of users. I was talking about optometrists, and I asked him, do you have a library card? Because I always ask people, and he's like, yeah, I live in Belfair, but I work here, and I just come in every day on lunch and read periodicals. Like, that's how he keeps up with the news, instead of on his phone, so
Okay, now I have a complaint.
I'm here for it.
Okay. I find your website infuriating.
The new website.
I think I just went on it recently.
Okay, so it is our new
And
website.
I'm not a computer native, I'm a digital native. I mean, I eventually can figure it out, but by that time I'm practically frothing at the mouth.
I'm sorry.
That's one thing.
Okay,
And
what infuriates you about it? Is it the search
It doesn't
function?
seem logical about where I can find what.
Right.
No, I mean, I think I can't be more specific. There's some things seem to be other things that's like, why are you calling it that? Because it doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay.
So that's one thing.
So you would suggest more plain language, is that what you
I
would
guess,
suggest?
yeah, more plain language.
Okay.
Yeah. Or
That- I
even
can buy that.
Even a map or something, I'm not even quite sure how you would convey it. But the other thing is, and this is really picky, okay, petty. So I was in the other day, and I've got a printer at home, but I just wanted to print out something really quickly. Half hour later, so there are two ways you can do it. So I had my $10 or whatever it was. She said the simplest, because I had it on my phone, this email I was gonna print out, but it's probably simpler to go to your computer, our computer, and go into your email and print it up from there.
Oh, as
And that
opposed to
was very
printing it from your phone?
And then the cursor on that thing, it's uncontrollable.
On our
Your computer,
desktop
yeah,
computers,
yeah.
okay.
So those were just, I don't do it very often, but I don't think I'm the only one that maybe feels that frustration.
Yeah, and thank you for that feedback. We are in the process of upgrading our whole printing system right now, and without, I've printed a couple times myself, and I'd have to go back through that process to get a real
And
understanding.
I had
of
someone
it.
help me,
Yeah,
and that was like, I swear, 12 different steps.
it should not have been 12
And
steps.
it was not even, it wasn't printed out anywhere.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what the steps were. Luckily, one of your staff people helped.
And I'm glad you said that, because I think instructions, I've actually worked in some of our, well, obviously I work as a library director, but part of what I try to do is actually work with staff from time to time, so I can get a sense of how services are being consumed, to get a sense of what patrons are asking about. I've actually helped people do things like set up their Kindles with an account, print things, and the new system can be a little finicky to work with, but we're switching over the software. I would imagine it will be easier, so thank you for that feedback.
Okay.
I
have to
will,
say, I went into MLK
yeah.
with a JPEG.
That's where I was.
Yeah, with a JPEG image for the jazz concert that I sponsored last year. And I asked somebody, I said, hey, how does this work? He said, do you have it on your phone? I said, here it is on my phone. He
Yeah.
went, bing, bing, bing. And literally I had like 28.5 by 11s in less than 5 minutes.
Well, you're probably more adept than I was.
No, really,
Because that's where I was just a couple of days ago.
no, I just like, I think I'm better at like saying, you, help me please. I
and
don't
all
know
of
how to
our
do this."
professionals will help you to the ends of the earth. That's why they're
At that
public
time, I was,
service.
I don't care,
Yeah.
let me out of here.
No, but
I'm
that's
better
good
at being
feedback. I'll make
helpless
sure
than
we
Pilar.
address that and walk through what those steps look like.
Yeah, I eventually printed it out at home, but
I agree. Having
I have-
like documentation that shows you what to do is important. Yes.
I'm gonna make sure that everybody in the community has had what they wanna say.
When are the mugs coming back on the store?
Good question. I knew
Okay, I've
we'd
got
get to
a
this.
bigger picture thing.
My wife wants to know.
Um,
You don't have to answer right now.
No, because I've heard it. and we need to get them back out. We just did we did a mug sale on one of our, it's called Print Your Cause. So we have a site that's run by the foundation where you can essentially buy library swag to support the library if that's being donate money or buy something to support the library. So we've got a lot of people walking around in library gear. But to answer your question, I think we have to do another one because the demand has been so high. I would be looking at probably, our bandwidth is absolutely tanked right now, probably be after the 4th.
No problem, we'll wait.
Will it be called
I
the
just need
Jesse
to-
Adams
I
Memorial?
need to talk to our
Club?
communications director and my foundation director and see if we can pull it off. And I would love to be able to pull that off for folks who, and some people wanted the whole set.
Well, we were happy to buy them from the store too, it's just sold
Okay.
out.
Okay,
Anyway,
We'll get you a mug.
I do have a larger issue.
Have you, this is not about this or anything, but it's just about, I guess, the world we're living in right now. Do you have a lot of pressure, or any pressure, to take certain books off the shelves?
No.
I mean, I know you have a process, because I've asked you this before at a different meeting, that if someone is complaining, then you go through this whole thing, but it's not very often?
No. We've had people complain about,
Sex,
Either.
violence, and religion.
well, yes, I think it's well documented what libraries have gone through.
Yes.
Throughout particularly the last 5 years, but really it's
Yes.
been happening longer than that. There's a trend towards, I think, people wanting the library to act as the, local imperantus for children who are there, and we aren't. That's the simplest answer I can give you. Schools are different. You've entrusted that they will take care of your kids when they're there. In terms of libraries, there's a wealth of material for just about anybody. And when I say wealth of material, the Unabomber was taking out books from the library on how to make a bomb, right? What I would always say is, if there's something objectionable, I want to listen and find out why it's objectionable to you, but we haven't had a lot of pressure. We've gotten, one of the things I like to do is have a dialogue with the patrons. So if they're dissatisfied with the lack of availability of material and or the availability of material, I always want to figure out where that's coming from, because we can't be censors, and I just don't believe in that. And if kids are going to be in a library by themselves, that might be an opportunity to talk about with them what they should and shouldn't read. It's not up for me to put judgments on that. I just know that the library works because we have information available for everyone.
I mean, I'm just asking because I know it different parts of the country,
Yeah.
it's different. I'm just wondering how it was here.
We have had pockets of discontent, but nothing that's risen to the level of, factions of people wanting us to, create whole sections where you can keep some of those bits of material. And so that has not happened here. I think we've been very fortunate to have a lot of supporters here, and a little bit of things I've dealt with as a director has really been resolved by having a conversation.
Okay.
What's that?
Good, I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
thought
just
you
by
were-
having a conversation, and it's, maybe it's because you want material that we don't have, and sometimes having a conversation about, we'll give you one example. I had a patron who was dissatisfied that there wasn't material that was on a shelf that they could check out, and it was sort of this wave of we want this book that was written by Kirk Cameron, for instance. It was about As You Grow. It's about it's about family life, essentially, and they wanted that book to be available. And I said, we don't object to the book. We just can't get it right now because it's a trade paperback that wasn't available from our main publishers. Libraries usually have 1 or 2 publishers, but we're able to meet the demand by purchasing the book ourselves and getting it on our shelf. Look, I'm here for everybody. Whatever they want to see on their shelves, you can write a book and ask me to put it on a shelf, and we probably would put it on a shelf. We've had that before. We've had self-published authors who want it available in their local library, and we don't object to that. We want to still be, we're a system, and we have to systematize the way we do things, but we still want to make things readily available for the community. We're still the community's library and funded by the community, and so It's about being available for everybody and being open for everybody. And you can find just about anything on our shelves that supports your point of view either way.
And
That's
it's 6:30.
Oh, yes,
That was why I was. but-
yes,
So
but,
I have a question before,
yes.
I'm just gonna jump in here, in my role as counselor. So I've been looking at this dive into discovery. I grabbed a copy from the Sylvan Way.
And I'm gonna let you explain what that is, and this is your test.
Yeah. And I got the thing home and I circled all the events that are in Bremerton and I put it on the table by the door, and that's why I have this virtual version here. It's events for kids, it's concerts for kids, it's workshops for kids for over the summer. There's reading challenges and all kinds of stuff. But I was very struck by, compared to our population, how few events are in Bremerton. And part of it, I looked at the different places where they're held. Like in Manchester, it's held at the Stormwater Park. Well, we don't have anything like that.
Got Evergreen Park,
Sorry?
got Evergreen Park.
Exactly. There's a bunch of things that are held in parks in Kingston and in Manchester and on the waterfront in Port Orchard. I'm not like saying, Bremerton got stiffed, we have very few things. Instead of that, what I'm trying to say is, what advice do you have for City of Bremerton about how we can get into partnership, obviously not in 2025, but in 2026, so that we have more stuff here for kids?
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think when you mentioned like Stormwater Park and some of the other places, I think that, and you're right, Evergreen is a good
That was Deborah, but yeah.
spot to be able to do things, and we do show up in Evergreen for certain
Yeah.
events, but
You had that thing with the signs along the path.
Story Wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, I think, thank you for mentioning, I think, what typically that process involves is we plan a summer learning challenge and then we figure out which community events are happening where and what managers can support with the staffing they have on hand. And so I would say one of the challenges we have, and it's not really a real challenge because the wider Bremerton area we can dig into, and the closest space for MLK is Evergreen.
Right.
So it does represent an opportunity to be able to figure out what we can do there and, going through the requisite permitting process if we want to get that whole place. I think those might be some of the barriers, but I'll check with my Director of Public Services to figure out
Okay.
how all that is really determined on a detailed basis for every event.
That would be
Yes,
great.
that library is well used and well loved, and there's plethora of activity happening in it.
Yeah. Well, it would be nice, like, I'd really like to work with, I'd like our council to work with you and your, whoever you choose, so that we could have more events.
Boardwalk also.
Well, the boardwalk is another possibility. Thank you,
Which
Deb.
boardwalk? You mean down on,
Downtown,
yes.
by the
There are
fountains.
concerts there usually every Friday in the summertime, or they
Yeah.
used to be.
I have one more thing before we get out of here, and I was entirely remiss. Please take a flyer. I'm giving a number of flyers to Director Driver to educate people about the fireworks ordinance that we passed last year, that went into effect last year. And just let them know that they can't set them off in the parks, they can't set them off on, it's all on these flyers. So if you would just grab
And
one,
it's 12 hours.
it's 2 days now.
You expanded it instead of,
Is
because I've been writing about that.
is it like the 3rd through the 5th?
set?
But is that
Let me give you a
sales?
flyer.
Is that sales or
Because
setting them off?
I feel like people make their own rules when it comes to fireworks.
Well, there are
Sometimes it's
rules,
like,
they're pretty
My
strict
neighborhood
rules.
is prone to that.
yeah, and it's irritating if you have pets that are sensitive, or humans that are sensitive
We
like
have,
me,
like,
I don't like the
3
loud.
months of fireworks.
I prefer not to hear
This
things
is-
that sound
this
like
is-
gunfire
This is
personally.
expanded by about 2 days.
Yeah,
It used to be just
Oh, it is
on the-
July 3rd through
It
5th.
used to be
Yeah,
just on the
yeah.
floor.
I know.
Who decided this?
City Council tried to contemplate a ban, and what happens if we do a ban is we have to put it on the ballot. Since Kitsap County doesn't have a ban, we would just be like a little island having a ban. Navy Yard City would have no ban. Sorry.
That's not my question. It used to be 12 hours, so why is it now 3 days? I mean, does the city council decide that?
No, this is what public safety determined.
I would like to note that of those 35 complaints in 2024, 33 of them were probably from my neighborhood.
Where do
Yeah,
you
I'm
live?
sorry, I organized this really, really poorly.
Where?
Literally right up the hill there,
Okay.
so.
I'm sorry.
complain about fireworks?
Yeah, Director Driver, that was like supremely disrespectful of me. I am so sorry. I apologize.
For what?
I was driven by time. Ladies and gentlemen, Director Jason Driver.
No, it doesn't need to be that. It's a pleasure for me to talk to you. I love talking to people and getting a sense of what their library experience has been like. And it helps me to feel more connected to this community, and I mean that. It takes a lot to move from one place to another.
Chicago to here?
It was hard.
I'll bet.
It was hard, and it was really hard. I mean, tempered by the fact that it's so beautiful here, and while a lot of people complain about the rain, I just was glad I'm not dealing with like 2 feet of snow.
And that wind.
Right, which
That
is
wind
how we
is like
moved out.
nothing else.
We left on a Monday the 21st of January 2022, and my moving trucks were leaving out in the snow this hot. And we're getting all the stuff on the truck. We loaded up our car because we let the truck go, and then we drove the 2.5, 3. We made it a week's trip, but long and short is, when we got here, it was January 31st. I believe it was 40-something degrees, and I had no coat. I was like, this is beautiful. Is this
Yes.
winter here?
Yes, it pretty much is, right?
Now my body's adjusted, and now I feel like when it's 40, I have to have on a coat.
Yeah,
Perspective is everything, right?
Yeah.
I grew up going in shorts in like 30-degree weather. Now it's 45.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, thank you. I hope to see you around the library.
Okay.
And
Thank you, Director Driver.
thank you.
Does anybody have questions about fireworks?
I need to know where I can complain.